finally getting into game. It's going to be Impact on that Death Rattle Hunter and Casie on the Even Warlock.
So there's a couple ways you can approach this matchup as the Even Warlock. What you want to do, so Casey's Even Warlock deck has a lot of 2-drops. Double Acidic Swampus, it's playing Plated Beetles, Vulgar Homunculus. You can actually take a pretty aggressive stance as the Even Warlock. You can play a 2-drop on turn 2, tap 2-drop on turn 3, maybe play like a Shroom Brewer or a Twilight Drake. Or you can do the traditional game plan, tap, tap, plan on playing your big guys on curve. But the reason the Zoo plan sometimes works better is because the Death Rattle Hunter has ways to deal with big things. They have Spider Bomb and Candle Shot, or Spider Bomb and Candle Shot plus Hunter's Mark.
So you prefer going for that aggressive plan rather than going for the tap giant, especially when it's the case that he doesn't even currently even have that giant in the hand.
Well, he didn't have the follow-up at the time to go for the play, so I'm not sure that it was correct. But given that he didn't have any, it's tough. When you have the hand to do it, I think you certainly go for it. When you have a lot of 2-drops, you want to develop aggressively. But I don't blame Casie for going for the tap strategy, considering that he didn't have the follow-up in hand.
It is the case, though, that the Even Warlock has to play the aggressor in this matchup, because if they give, the Death Rattle Hunter too much time, they will be able to stick a minion and then just go off with these crazy cube turns, right?
Certainly. I mean, dealing with Katharina is almost impossible for every deck, and Even Warlock's also pretty liable to getting ground out by cards like Deathstalker or Rexar. And even sometimes you can just make an insurmountable board position. Like if you cube and play dead, Even Warlock's not a deck that's very good at dealing with this. And Impact actually just going to go for it with the flanking strike.
This seems very weak to Hellfire, but it is going to be a little bit better against that Spellstone that Casie has. So a play that looked incredibly strange, going to really work out well for Impact here.
I don't hate it. I don't know. I think it makes sense. It's more likely he has Spellstone than Hellfire. He's really, I've seen the Hunter players play very differently in this matchup. That's just a 3-3 Witchwood Grizzly, Bob.
I mean, if it sticks, he's got the cube to just make it big the following turn.
Wait a minute.
So now Impact, realizing that he's willing to push face with that Hunter's Mark in hand to deal with that Hooked Reaver coming down. Now it's going to be the case where Impact just has that possibility of cubing the Witchwood Grizzly. Obviously going to be weak to Spellbreaker, but a lot of times if they're forced to play that Spellbreaker, you're not really coming back on board well. You're still staring down this. Oh, yeah.
I think Casie
should
have given some thought to that Skulkengeist last turn to not let that happen.
Oh, yeah, it also just shuts off the Hunter's
Yeah,
Mark.
it would have been a very strong, and I think he had enough life to play with considering he had a lot of defensive cards in his hand. This is going to be a tough one for Casie from here. I think I would have liked to see him play that Skulkengeist. It seemed like a good opportunity to do so. If he got cubed, he would have been able to Spellbreaker the cube without too much punish, and he had the Hooked Reavers to follow up and play defensively. So I think maybe a little bit too passive. Impact putting on that pressure could have kind of got Casie in a more defensive mindset. Like, I don't want to get hit so hard, so I'm going to put up a taunt. But in this case, I think, that is just game. That is lethal
Hunter's
damage.
Mark and Mossy Heart is going to be enough to push through here, and I wonder how different the game would have been if you went for your line of going for the Skulkengeist. It's obviously easier to say when we have the caster vision, when we could see that there's going to be that punish of the Play Dead and the Hunter's Mark. But Impact with just an interesting play out here. The case of just playing a flanking strike on your own minion to add pressure, playing down to 3-3 Grizzly to stick into the cube, ended up working out for him.
He just killed him. That's pretty rare in that matchup. That tends to go quite a bit longer. Usually the Even Warlock's actually the aggressor. So
yeah, I mean, that was just pretty funny because I was just asking you, like, oh, yeah, usually the Warlock has to be the one to, have the initiative to be the one that's beating down the Death Rattle Hunter. But Impact, he knows what Hunter does. Hunter kills people.
Hunter goes face. Yep. He only clicked the hero power one time.
What a break.
What a break. When, Amnesiac had enough, he was like, get me out of here. And we're bringing the Tavern Hero himself, Will Scarlet.
To be
How
fair,
you doing? And, Twitch chat's probably excited. They're like, boom, quick break. What's better than that?
Get me out of here tends to be the normal response when you hang out with Bob for an extended period of time. So
I mean, I bullied him about Pavel. Like, that's something that scarred him mentally. But looks like we are going into game number 2. Casey's going to be switching to that Shutterwalk Shaman. Impact, going to go for the Odd Paladin here.
None will survive.
Definitely a really tough matchup from the Shutterwalk Shaman side, just because this is something we've been talking about a lot this weekend, is seemingly innocuous boards from the Odd Paladin, such as just a couple of tokens. Suddenly just become you play a raid leader, you play a level up, you play a fungal mancer. Suddenly, these innocuous tokens just become devastating powerhouses that can push a lot of damage. So
You really just don't feel good about AoEing a board of just 1/1s, but there's always that threat to capitalize on it with things like the level up and the raid leader. And Impact's just got the hand to just play incredibly aggressive. I gotta imagine that he's probably not gonna respect this Lightning Storm coming out, especially playing this Void Ripper. There's always a chance that this 3 theory is going to live half the time.
As far as Lightning Storm goes, he's not even too bummed about that as well, because look at the board. It's 4 tokens that he makes every single turn and a Void Ripper. If he's trading that for a Lightning Storm, he is A-okay with that. Mind Control Tech taking a 1/1.
I mean, that was overwhelmingly likely going to be the result, so Casie can't feel too surprised about that one. And Impact's just going to continue to play for board. I'm going to be interested to see whether he goes for the trades here to try and protect this 3-3. A lot of times you do want to be incredibly aggressive before that Volcano does come out. So there is some merit in just pushing all face, and I love it, man. What's better than just hitting your opponent in the head, making him that much more closer to being dead with that Leroy in hand?
Actually killing them. That's what's better.
Yeah, and Shudderlock Shaman, part of the reason it's so good against aggro is just the access to Lightning Storm or Volcano into something like Healing Rain. It always feels like you get so close, and then just the access to the 12 burst of healing. It's a lot to come back from, but Impact has that one copy of Divine Favor in the hand. It's going to be just so good here. Going to be able to refuel when his hand was just not looking great. Leroy was not going to come out, since very likely that this Healing Rain was going to come out soon. And also Taunt Maul is just going to be the worst one a lot of times. And obviously Baku, not the card that you want in the hand.
You doing all right, Bob? Talked a lot right there.
I'm doing
That was the most you've talked this entire weekend.
I'm
you
doing
feel good.
great, man. This is the
Amnesiac
top
just
4.
has some crazy effect on you that I've clearly not been able to, tap into.
That's true. Amnesiac's great. What a great guy he is.
He is. We've seen him grow from the young upstart at 15 to...
If only he could just win a single match in top 16. I'm going to
only.
totally ignore that he, just won a match and he won the whole thing in Austin. I'm just going to ignore that fact and just pretend that he just keeps losing.
Yeah, that's just what he does. Name a more iconic duo. Amnesiac and losing in top 16.
Just can't.
Can't do it.
It might be Impact and just never losing.
It's looking that way. We're in the semifinals. Impact is still 11-0. Up 1-0 versus Casie, and he's looking to go into the finals with an undefeated record, which, if you recall back to Oakland just a couple months ago, did the exact same thing and fell to Teray, but Teray is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, and the Healing Rain already came out, and Casey's already under so much pressure. He's going to have to go for the Coin Hagatha here, which does heal him up a little bit, but once a Vine Cleaver comes out unanswered by Weapon Destruction, that is just so much damage and so many minions on the board for Casie to try and deal with here. It's going to be the case where we talked about before, you don't want a Volcano, just a whole bunch of 1/1s, but it's the case once these minions stick, you can just push them through for so much damage. And the Glacial Shard's actually a pretty good pickup. Going to be able to pick up a spell from Hagatha and also locking out a swing from the Vine Cleaver is exactly what you're trying to do in this situation.
Casie, on the flip side, Sacred Maul in the hand for Impact. Probably by far the worst one in this matchup. And also got the Hagatha online. And there's still the Gluttonous who's somewhere in this deck. So if he cycles enough, he's going to be able to take care of this Vine Cleaver. And Impact doesn't really have a whole lot of follow-up. We got Thick Patches in the hand, who's not coming out for quite some time. Champion's Maul has a little bit of reload, but...
And finding that second Healing Rain is actually going to be pretty good because he's going pretty low on life, especially when we can see that Impact has that Vine Cleaver and Leroy up in his hand. It's also just going to be the case where with Hagatha up, it's always the spot where if you find minions, it could just turn into great removal spells to help deal with the board. But now we're getting these turns. Do you have to Volcano? Doesn't feel great.
He has the Avalanche from the Hagatha. That can kill 2 things and freeze a third. We also have access to the Grumble, so we can push a little bit of damage face and then Grumble freeze the face once again.
When Avalanche first came out as a card, I was convinced that I would always swap what it would do. I was so confused whether it would freeze the middle one and deal the 3 damage to the sides or deal 3 damage and then freeze the 2 left and right. Turns out that it does freeze the neighbors, correct? I don't even
When you
know.
started that sentence, I just assumed you knew. You still don't know.
Avalanche, it does one or the other.
He'll hover. We'll find out in a sec.
I'm pretty sure.
Freeze a
okay.
minion, deal 3 damage to
I just got it
adjacent
wrong
ones.
again. I'm pretty
Bob.
sure Blizzard changes it.
I
They
found the more
flip-flop it.
I found the more iconic duo than
Me and
top
being
six.
unable to read, I'm pretty sure.
Bob and illiteracy. Name a more iconic duo. You can't.
So I'm pretty sure this is a matchup where you don't really want to do the preemptive level up. You want to just make these boards of 1/1s over and over again and then level up to push damage like a Savage Row type effect rather than, level up and try and have the minions live to something like AoE.
There's that Gluttonous Ooze we were talking about earlier. Going to be able to kill off the last bit of that Vine Cleaver value. Going to heal for 4. Can also Volcano beforehand, doing a full board clear, so he develops a free spell off the Hagatha, clears board, and gets rid of the pressure from the Vine Cleaver. Impact's looking like
the
it's,
ooze was so crucial for him there. If he didn't have that, just being able to just push 4 more damage, make the 1/1s, threaten another level up would be something that Casie would really have a hard time dealing with. Impact gonna go with this Maul to then try and refill the board again. Now it's gonna be the case where Casey's picking up a lot of value with this Hagatha, and he's starting to get in a little bit more of a comfortable position. He also can do this cute play of bounce the weapon destruction back at the hand, play the use again, gain a little bit of armor.
and another Hagatha spell. Picking up the Tidal Surge, such a good card because not only does it clear off the board, but it also heals. And
I really want the
Storm.
Stormbringer to be played this game. It
Oh,
turns any of your minions into random legendaries.
on the board.
On your board, of course, and that could lead to some pretty wacky stuff. There's no really bad, legendary results. Obviously, you can get
Oh,
low stat minions.
let me tell
but
you, there
there's
are
not
some
any
plenty
that
bad.
will lose you the game.
I don't know. Baron Geddon is pretty good. I'm trying to think. Lich King is obviously great.
The worst one would probably be something like Lorewalk or Cho, because you wouldn't have an easy time killing
I believe
it off.
Evil Nat Pagel is no longer in the game. That rotated out with the
Whoa.
Whispers of the Old Gods.
Look at the speed that Casie just fired off those attacks.
I blinked and missed it.
I'm pretty sure he did those attacks before he even saw the top card in his deck.
Earthshock's pretty good. Can kill basically anything he chooses. Probably going to shoot it at the Argent Squire. Tidal Surge can kill off one of these other 3/3s. I think Tidal Surge definitely has to be in consideration because he's at 13 health. Leroy is 6. We've seen one Blessing of Might, but how much more are you willing to go in terms of your life total going down? I think he's got to start healing.
Yeah, I'm pretty okay with just taking a defensive line here. You're just stacking up these value options off of Hagatha, and you see that Impact has a very low hand size. And when that's the case, you're really just trying to just run Odd Paladin out of resources. Of course, they always have that hero power, but in this stage of the game, a lot of times the 2 dudes a turn is very manageable.
Firefly off the top. One of the last cards Impact was looking to get in his deck. I think he's only running the 1 copy of Divine Favor. 2 copies, actually. So he still has another out. Kind of the downside of this Hagatha, if there really is one, is that if he keeps developing random spells every time he plays a minion, he's going to have a very clunky hand. When you have a clunky hand, Divine Favor is only going to get better and better.
All right, and Impact has now seen 2 healing rains come out. He knows that the only healing left is from that Hagatha hero power. So he's just going to go all in, taunt up those minions to hope that this Leroy will be able to survive. But it's going to be the case that he needs that Divine Favor, a second Vine Cleaver. Casie is definitely running low on life, though.
Here's something Casie was holding on to, the Totemic Might. I was actually going to comment on this saying, would it be better to just get rid of it just to play around that second Divine Favor? But he waited till he got the Manatide Totem and then ripped it just so it would live through something like a Vine Cleaver. But even in that event, if Impact's getting the Vine Cleaver off the top, I cannot see him sending it anywhere but the Dome.
And Casie really needs a life drinker here. Just any amount of healing would go such a long way in this spot. Impact just trying to find that last bit of push to try and end this game.
Avalanche used to freeze and clear most of the board. Electra Storm Surge, really good if he picks up a Healing Rain, but Farsight can hopefully cycle a little bit more, but a lot of these Hagatha spells are going pretty dead right now. Void Ripper, not setting up, pushing anywhere closer to lethal, but still a very good card nonetheless, taking care of that Manatide Totem, denying those draws. But Serenite Chain Gang for Casie, I think that's going to seal the deal.
I think there's still just a little bit of hope, especially when there's going to be that Divine Favor and just the possibility of Vine Cleaver in the deck. We saw Impact was throwing out some prayers to the Hearthstone gods, hoping that Casey's hand would just be full of just useless Hagatha spells. But the Chain Gang is enough to stabilize the board just for right now. And Ancestral Healing is actually just going to be access to another taunt here.
I saw the green and I thought it was Healing Rain. I got really excited. But alas, it's just Ancestral Healing. Zola, another Rockbiter weapon. Shudderwalk runs Doomhammer these days, right?
Nope. I wish. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah. Just a one-of copy, just as an alternate win condition.
But now with Impact, with just the Righteous Protector off the top, especially when you know another Chain Gang is going to come down, he's also just dying soon. Casie doesn't really have to take all these trades. He probably will to play around and level up, but he has a decent amount of damage in hand where he'd try and find a spot where he could set up. Whoa! Okay, so he could go Electra, Rockbiter, Wind Fury next turn, so he can make all the trades and still have an incredible burst of lethal.
That's going to be 9 damage from the Rockbiters on a 2-attack minion.
It's like 22 damage. It's a lot.
That's plenty.
From just one minion.
You don't even need the Electra.
Yeah, that's true. So just jam some minions on the board.
Just one of these has to live.
And just take some trades. I feel like Casie, despite going so low on health, was finally able to turn the corner in this game. He got so many tools too. Just having both Healing Rains, having that Tidal Surge. If he didn't have the Tidal Surge, he'd be dead.
That 4 health made all the difference in the world, and Hagatha spells are just so good. Even if they're random Shaman spells, which on average are not the best, as we can see in the hand currently. Every once in a while you just get that one that just wins you the game. I'm wondering how differently this matchup plays out if instead of a Divine, or the 1/1 Divine Shield taunt, picks up that second Divine Favor. Instead of getting a Sacred Maul, he got a Blessed Maul. Just these little minute things in the game.
Doesn't even value setting up lethal next turn. I think that's just a lot of respect to a 5-dude level up there. But with that, I guess if he had the Lightning Storm in hand, he wouldn't have done this play. I think he's just very comfortable playing it slow, especially now that he has the Healing Rain from Hagatha. He could just heal for 24. 28 HP is a lot when your odd Paladin opponent just doesn't have cards.
You could also Electra Storm Surge into the Stormbringer. Upgrade him
that,
twice.
That play is way more fun.
Yeah,
and
come on,
it loses you the
Casie.
game way more as well. But that is definitely going to be
Top 4.
Casie sealing out this game. Impact gonna give himself one more draw to try and hope for that Divine Favor. But even if he hits it, I don't think he's fighting back on this board.
Now you can see him down the lower left-hand corner shaking his head. He's a little upset with how that game went. I think he considers himself the favored matchup here, and it's always a little frustrating to win the favored matchup, but we've seen that pretty consistently this weekend with stuff like the Death Rattle Hunter having a lot of game against decks like Odd Rogue and Zoo. So it's definitely not outside the realm of possibility for the Shudderwalk to win that, especially with Hagatha online so early.
A lot of people brought the Shudderwalk Shaman saying it does so well against aggro, and we definitely saw it there. Just having the tools to slow down the board, to heal up afterwards. He gained so much life that game. He used 2 Healing Rains.
2 Healing Rains.
A Healing Rain with an Electra, so that's basically 4. And then also a Tidal Surge, and you could count Hagatha Armor as well. Impact probably pushed over 40, maybe even 50 damage that game, but not enough. Definitely not enough. Swap to the Odd Rogue.
Went for the Odd Rogue.
Had to hit face.
Just was not confident in the deck.
Lame.
I think he played a couple of practice series versus Oskaka, and heading into the next game, game number 3, Casie on the Death Rattle Hunter versus Impact on the Odd Paladin. I see Candle Shot, and I'm already happy.
Yeah, when Amnesiac was on this desk with me, he was saying that Odd Paladin was the one aggro deck that he did feel was truly favored against Death Rattle Hunter. But I'll tell you, one Candle Shot will go a long way in stopping aggression in the early game.
Yeah, Argent Squire, Argent Protector, the tokens, all of them crumble beneath the might of the Candle Shot. Devil Sore Egg and the Terrorstale Stalker also in the hand.
This is a
nice
curve.
little 1, 2, 3, 4 with the Defender of Argus picked up off the top. Casey's looking real nice right now.
Yeah, and I mean, Impact has the Void Ripper and the Blessing of Mites, but he's not going to have the mana to kill the egg on the turn it comes down. And here's just the question is, do you respect this egg right here? Do you Blessing a Mite to just pop it so then Casie does not get the 5/5? The real big downside of doing that would be that if you went for a Blessing a Mite, you could just eat it up with that candle shot. Maybe Raid Leader makes popping the egg a little bit less awkward for Impact here. It's really hard to find the spots as aggro, when to pop the egg or when to ignore it.
Raid Leader is an option. However, on the left-hand side, you also see that Void Ripper, which essentially does the same job. Going to pop that egg, push 2 damage as well. Don't have to waste the Blessing of Mites. The problem is with that candle shot, it's going to clear up one of these 1/1s, and the Void Ripper is just going to get traded into by the 5/5. Meanwhile, Casey's going to be developing. Terrasail Stalker on curve, while not ideal, is still a 3-mana 3/3, and when you're playing against an aggressive deck like the Odd Paladin, every body matters.
The only problem that I have with playing the Void Ripper is because you really want that card to deal with Witchwood Grizzly. It is so important that when that card comes down and, wow, I'm just going to get stopped mid-sentence. Impact is going for double Blessing of Might despite this candle shot being up. And this would be incredibly problematic for Casie if he did not have that candle shot. But it's crazy to see the Impact still go for that play despite the value that it gives Casie.
Yeah, this candle shot has done absolutely so much work. I like the fact that he split it up so he couldn't get rid of both the attacks, or both of the buffs. But the candle shot, like you said, would have been real problematic if Casie didn't have that candle shot. But we all knew he had the candle shot because he's already used it twice. And so I'm not really sure what's going on in Impact's head with that play because he had stuff that he could develop with.
You do not come back from this defender of Argus. This just was an absolute blowout play. Impact really not working with much. You could Void Ripper some stuff around, make this 5 attack Devilsaur a little bit less threatening, but how do you fight back on board? We can see that Casie has both Rexar and Mossy Horror, which are just incredible tools in this matchup, and just having such a commanding lead in a matchup where you're usually so far behind on board at this point. I just don't know what you do if you're the Odd Paladin.
You look down at the keyboard, you look to the upper left-hand corner, there's a button that has E, S, and C written on it. You want to hit that button. A little pop-up's going to come up in the middle of the screen. There's going to be a giant red bar that says Concede on it.
Impact has come way too far in this tournament to try and dip out this soon. But I got to agree with you. I don't think it would matter too much if he did. I couldn't blame him.
Even the Carnivorous Cube to fill out the curve. This is just... I don't think Death Rattle...
This hand was rude. This was a rude hand.
The first iteration of Death Rattle Hunter came into existence, I believe this was the curve that the mastermind behind the deck had in mind when they made the deck. And now that we're seeing it played out in top 4, exactly as intended, whoo boy is that disgusting.
And this is why, you know, when I was asking Amnesiac, what would you play to exploit Death Rattle Hunter? And he was just sort of explaining that the deck is so good that it's really hard to target. It just has hands like these that although it's unfavored, you just go 3 into 3 after a candle shot, play the Defendant Vargas, and now Impact's going to try and Vine Cleaver and just try and close out the game with a Leroy, but Casie just knows that both Blessing Mites are gone. Even if Leroy came off the top, it would not be enough.
Yeah, it's really hard to race in this position with the Vine Cleaver. Like you said, especially since after both Blessing of Mites have been used, Leroy is only 6, and Rexar is going to gain another 5 armor. And so this race is all but over. Impact thanking Casie for, I don't even know what. This just incredible display of deck building prowess.
An absolutely beautiful draw for Casie, just leading to a turn 8 victory. Nothing Impact can really do here to stay alive, even just a single turn. And that means that Impact's going to try and have to climb back, beating even Warlock 2 times in a row. And I'll tell you what, even Warlock's pretty good against Odd Paladin. You have cards like Defile and Hellfire, and that deals with their wide boards perfectly.
And even 2 Dread Infernals as well to deal with a wide 1/1 board. Bone Mare to taunt up anything. Skulking Geist gets rid of the Blessing of Mites, and then you have Hooked Reaver and Spellstone as recovery tools as well. Impact 11-0 through the Swiss bracket, top 16 through the top 8. We're in the top 4.
He's found himself in a position where he is very unfavored, having to win 2 matchups, especially when one of them is a heavy unfavorite. Casey's got to be feeling good here.
He's got to be feeling real good. You always feel good when you go up in a series, but sometimes you're up like 2-0 in a series. You're like, my last deck is not good, and I have 3 chances to win with it. Sometimes you still don't get there, but like you said, this matchup a lot more favorable than a lot of matchups we've seen this weekend. And so Casie has to be feeling at least semi-decent about the next 2 games. Or 1 game, depending if he wins.
According to stats, Odd Paladin is very unfavored, but if you speak to Muzzy, he always jokes around that it is Odd Paladin favored because I'm pretty sure on ladder, he went like 15-0 in that matchup over the course of a month. So then he just keeps joking that, oh yeah, Odd Paladin, heavy favorite. But
can you trust Muzzy?
Unless you high roll like Muzzy does, it's going to be hard. It's definitely going to be hard.
If you high rolled like Muzzy does, Muzzy would be on stream right now. Too bad he's in the audience.
True. But
so
this is actually this matchup we saw a little bit earlier. I was explaining that Malagos Druid does pretty well in it, and then the Malagos Druid just died to 2 8/8s. But we could see Impact actually has that copy of Naturalize, which is so important. He also has Twig of the World Tree, so if Casie can't find his Acidic Swamp Ooze, that could also lead to just absolutely crazy turns. It's also the case that even if you have the Weapon Destruction, at some point you're going to have to ramp them up to 10 mana if you're afraid of the Twig. And that's the part of the reason why Impact is going to go and coin it out right here. Just getting the turns online. If that, Acidic Swamp Ooze finds its way into the hand, it's almost going to act like a Nourish, this Twig of the World Tree, because even when it's destroyed, you still go up to 10 mana.
Here's actually something very interesting. Casie played the Mountain Giant, which on the face isn't that interesting of a play, but he could have fit it in a tap first. So why don't you think he fit it in the tap, Bob? Is he just very skeptical about getting his life too low?
No, it's all about this Naturalize coming out because it does draw you 2 cards. Ooh. You don't really want to overdraw in this matchup. Some players think there's an upside to sometimes tap just because you do want to get down to 15 to get those Hooked Reavers online. But Casie just ended up burning that Acidic Swamp Ooze, which would have been very good here to stop a crazy, say, 17 mana turn coming out from Impact.
I'm going to take a look at Casey's lists right now. 2 Acidic Swamp Oozes are in the deck, so there is potential to draw the second one. However, would have been nice to just have the first one. 2 Spellstones in the hand, not doing a whole lot. We have the Lich King coming up. Skulking Geist is going to be really nice next turn because it's going to get rid of the Spellstones and the second Naturalize, which is going to protect cards like the Lich King and like the Mountain Giant if he finds it.
So this is actually really interesting. Impact could have went for double draw to find something like a Nourish, but instead he is going to double armor just to level up this Spellstone and get completely blown out by that Skulking Geist there.
Yeah, Spellstone going bye-bye. Going to use the swipe on a Skulking Geist.
But do you know why it's okay? Because he's about to have access to a 17 mana turn. If he wanted to, he could get this Malfurion online, punch the Dread Infernal, go for that Ultimate Infestation. That's one of the things that, sometimes people misunderstand about Malagos Druid. You don't always just want to save this Twig until you're going off with Malagos. A lot of times you find yourself in these situations where you could just have enough tempo off the back of this swing turn where you don't really need, say, the 20 mana turn with Malagos to just instantly kill your opponent. Right now he's just making a board and just being ahead against even Warlock in this stance. They don't come back on board particularly well, especially now that Impact draws so much of his deck with the UI.
Also playing the Arcane Tyrant just as a follow-up to that. Now, looking at the hand, the second Arcane Tyrant as well. Casie in a rough patch right now.
You think there's a Defile here? I heard that there's always a Defile, and he finds Acidic Swamp Ooze one turn after just to absolutely taunt him. I like how he hovered it. He's like, oh yeah, nice of you to show up now.
Acidic Swamp Ooze. Hey, I heard you guys call my name. What's going on? Did I miss the party?
All right, so there is a Defile clear. If he plays this Acidic Swamp Ooze, jams down that Beetle, casts the Defile, that it gets all the way up to 5, and also keeps this Twilight Drake alive on 1 HP.
Plated Beetle. I thought you meant the Scarab Beetle, and I was very confused for a second. But we found it. Good job, Bob. You're not a math guy, but you found that one.
It's after the, those board clear puzzles, you have to learn how to always spot the Defile.
Did you finish those?
Of course. Wait, okay, so that Twilight Drake, he did attack at the start of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he had to set that minion to 1. I just want to make sure he didn't miss an attack there, and he definitely did not.
No, Casie is a high-caliber player. He would never miss an attack like he did last game with Defender Vargas.
You don't get to top 16 as many times as he did, just forgetting stuff like that.
Even though we just saw him do it the previous game.
Irrelevant.
That's in the past. Moving on to the future. And the future is looking bright for Complexity. Lich King going down with the upgraded Spellstone. He's going back up to 25.
Man, and it's just going to be the case for the rest of the game. If Casie goes wide on the board with minions that aren't too big, he will get blown out by spreading Plague into Anti-Magic Shell.
Hooked Reaver coming down as a 4-4. Can't blame Casie at this point because getting to 15 is going to be very difficult, and you can't exactly rely on your opponent getting you to that low because it's Mally Druid. If he's dealing damage to your face, it's probably going to be with a huge burst that's going to do a lot more than just 10.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of just, say, holding on to this Anti-Magic Shell. No reason to, say, go for the Lich King and buff it up right here. Obviously, it would make a little bit harder for Casie to deal with, but there's always answers like Spellbreaker that we see in Casey's hand. Right now, I'm pretty sure Impact just wants to continue cycle through his decks. He even might hold this Floop for when it turns into a Malagos. This is a matchup where a lot of times you'll be just able to play the Malagos as is and then follow up with the Flooped version of it.
Yeah, early iterations of the deck did have cards like the Siphon Soul, and as the deck got more and more competitive,
Oh, that's
those got
perfect
cut.
draw there.
Technically can hit the Florist.
But even if you hit the Florist, he just plays the Florist again and then reduces the Malagos to 2. So no matter what it hit there, he always had the option to then reduce the Malagos to 2, which is exactly what you're trying to do in this matchup. And now he has the option that it hit the Malagos to go Malagos Floop of the Malagos and swipe and double Moonfire in the same turn for crazy amounts of damage. And as I said before, as soon as Casie went wide on the board,
Here comes
Spreading
the punish.
Plague, Anti-Magic Shell, we don't see a Hellfire Defile in hand. This is going to be really rough for Casie to deal with, especially now that he doesn't have access to that tap every single turn.
Yeah.
And this hero power can only go face right now. Can't even help deal with the board.
So yeah, like I was saying about Evenlock before, Impact rudely interrupted me with his great play with Spreading Plague, is that Siphon Soul no longer is really in the deck with Evenlock because as the list got more and more competitive, things had to get cut, and certain meta iterations require different kinds of removal, and Siphon Soul is one of the first cards to get cut, so just a vanilla Malagos is going to be really hard to remove, but Doom Pact picked off the Lich King is going to be just the answer he needs.
Yeah, if he didn't get that Doom Pact, he really did not have much to deal with the board.
2 mana Malagos. See a Floop, but I'm not seeing that many spells to follow up with it. There's the one Moonfire that's going to do 11 damage, but Alexstrasza leaving the Lich King up. Does not care.
Yeah, I mean, he
At
just
all.
realizes this turn that he's not afraid of anything like a Death Grip, so play Alex the turn you can. You could follow this up with a UI, and then it's very likely that you will have these spells to burn out the game.
Remember when I said that it's going to be very hard to get back down to 15? Well, I lied. Alexstrasza did it just then.
But
Hooked Reaver coming online.
look at what Spellstone and Hero Power does, right back at 30 HP. This is going to be a crazy amount of burst after the UI, though. And it'll be a little bit interesting to see whether Impact respects this third card coming out from Lich King, or he just wants to send this UI face. I guess you could always go for the Ferocious Howl and Nourish because it does not overdraw you. That does seem to make a little bit more sense. You could always just play this Wild Growth if you had the hand size as well.
Yeah, the hand size is a little awkward just to ship the UI face right now because it's more likely than not to burn one of the things that he wants to send face later on. But with the second Moonfire picked up off the top, wouldn't be surprised if you would rather go for, say, the Nourish draw into a Wild Growth. But at the same time, this Lich King has been on the board for 2 turns now, and it's going to get a lot of work in. Doom Pact was alright. Obliterate, not really what he's looking for, but eventually he's going to get something like a Death Coil or a Anti-Magic Shell.
This is interesting. Impact is just
for it
going
again.
for the Alexstrasza rather than having the Malagos 2 times in turn. He can, you know, faceless it and go for that. And I feel like that's what he's hoping for there. So if you go for the double Moonfire, it would not be enough to kill Casie in this situation. It would just be 22.
Yeah, with the Faceless Manipulator off the top, I like this play a lot because I didn't see it at first and I was confused because Alexstrasza there essentially did 10 damage, but having the Floop on the Malagos adds 5 more spell damage to 2 Moonfires, which is essentially doing 10 damage. And so, but with the Faceless pickup on the Malagos, makes a lot more sense because Casey's now 7 health lower than he was the previous turn with Ascent, and now Impact has the same exact reach, but for 1 more mana.
Yeah, for sure. It's the case in this matchup a lot. Once that Malagos comes down in the swipe, a lot of times even Warlock just has no way to deal with the Malagos on board other than just silence it. And obviously pushing 4 damage can just be a huge deal after the swipe doesn't kill him. But now that he has that Doom Pact off the Lich King, it really was a great pickup to try and play a little bit of a more long-term strategy.
Now, how many cards does Impact have left in his deck? Because Spreading Plague essentially is a 6-mana Frost Nova. Casey's going to have no issues pushing through it.
I think he's just going to launch the UI face. He knows that if he does not have access to any healing in hand, Impact might be thinking whether he wants to just clear the board here. If you go for the board clear, is it ever going to be the case where you get fatigued by the Gul'dan hero power?
Oh, absolutely. That is going to be the case because the Gul'dan hero power is just strictly better than the Malfurion hero power because the way the lifesteal works is essentially doing the Malfurion hero power, but without having to choose. It's doing the 3 health gain and the 3 attack every turn, while Malfurion is one or the other. And so in a hero power matchup, where hero power is going to decide the game, Gul'dan's going to win every time. Spellbreaker coming down, 2 of them, pushing 15 damage. It's really hard to find value for a Spellbreaker, especially in this matchup. He found the one opportunity.
And
He's gonna push a
Impact
whole
really
lot of
needs
damage.
to find that swipe off the top of his deck. I think he only has 1 left. Oh,
Oh,
that was it. It's that
Bob,
easy.
what have I told you
He's
about
not
saying
ready to
card names?
lose.
This is awful. You keep saying names, and then they appear on screen, and you need to use your powers for good, not evil.
All right, and just like that, Impact was able to deal with the board. I don't think that is... Oh, no, that's just lethal. Who knew?
Just exact lethal. Even
That's what
worse.
I said. We never count. We let the players count. Look at Impact. Big brain. He realized that he set up the situation where if a swipe came down, and say even if Casie went for that Shroom Brewer over the Spellbreaker, he would have been able to Doom Pact, but then does he survive that hero power every turn? It could have been a decision that he could maybe beat himself over, but...
He literally was.
Yeah.
Smacking himself in the face.
But man, Impact being able to find that swipe in the crucial time, it's still going to be an uphill battle for him winning this Odd Paladin versus even Warlock. Sometimes, you know, Odd Paladin can get those aggressive starts. You get a Blessing of Might on a Defiant Shield minion. That could push a lot of damage. Just kill him turn 5 with Leroy. But Casie has to shake that one off, go into this last game with a calm head, know that you're favored, and just, you know, give it your all. Play as best as you can.
Yeah, not playing the Shroom Brewer there is definitely a little bit of a blunder from Casie, and you can just see it on his face. He's just really beating himself up, and that just tends to happen after a long weekend of Hearthstone. These players have been playing basically ever since Friday afternoon. All the way up today, they've played dozens of hours of Hearthstone, and fatigue's going to start setting in, both in-game and IRL, and it starts to affect them a little more IRL.
And I love to see this mulligan choice from Impact. He realizes although Quarter Creeper is usually your best card in almost every matchup, it's not too great when you're looking to kill your opponent on turn 5. And now that he went for this more aggressive mulligan, he does have that Blessing of Might on a Divine Shield minion like I was talking about. And this is just going to be a lot of damage. We'll see how Impact sequences this if he's willing to respect Defile. And in a matchup like this, I like taking risks, play around nothing. And instead of going for that Blessing of Might here, he's willing to say, if you have Defile, it is a board clear, but I'm looking to kill you.
Yeah, the more aggressive openings by the Odd Paladin tend to favor them in the long term, just because the longer the game goes on, the more likely it is that the Spellstone's going to get upgraded, the more likely it is that Casey's going to have bodies to get the Sun Fury Protector on. Acidic Swamp Ooze is really rough in the opening hand because it's really good at killing weapons, but what do you do with it when you need a body on the board and your opponent doesn't have a weapon? Do you save it for the Vine Cleaver turn? Do you use it to kill a Blessed Maul? Or do you just play it as a vanilla 3-2 just to help fight for board?
Yeah, I really like holding that Acidic Swamp Ooze if you can. Even Warlock truly does not want to have to deal with that Vine Cleaver. They only have a limited amount of AoE, 2 Defiles and 2 Hellfires. Outside of that, they don't have much to deal with the wide board. So another way that Odd Paladin can win this matchup is just save Fatigue, the even Warlock of resources, which is a little bit easier to do when you do have the Divine Favor in hand.
No, it's a really good way to win this matchup. Not getting Sacred Maul. By far the worst one. Taunt is doing nothing in this matchup. Imagine how much more damage Impact could be pushing if that was a Blessed Maul or even the Divine Shield.
And Casey's just getting hit here. He does have this Spellstone to deal with both the Raid Leader and the Taunt, taking a little bit of a value trade there. So able to slow it down, but Casie needs to find his first AoE.
Really interesting that he hasn't found it yet. But at the same time, Casie hasn't exactly been tapping aggressively as the Even Lock usually does. Played the Plated Beetle on turn 2, the Sun Fury Protector on turn 3, and now the Spellstone on turn 4. So he hasn't actually been utilizing his hero power at all in order to find those board clears. But on the flip side of that, one Hooked Reaver, double Twilight Drake. He's already at 15. This Hooked Reaver's already online.
And Impact probably hoping that he didn't have it, but he realizes that even if that Hooked Reaver came online, he would be able to trade. But now Casie finding that Hellfire, gonna hold on to that Hooked Reaver, makes a lot of sense. Would rather do that than have your just Hooked Reaver die on board and then potentially get punished by something like Fungalmancer.
On the flip side...
Are you saying that because there's a Void Ripper?
No, Bob.
Okay.
But I'm glad you brought it up. The flip side of Casie not tapping, because he's been aggressively fighting for board and clearing and trying to heal, that he has less cards in hand, which is on the face a bad thing. But Impact has Divine Favor in his hand, and it's not going to draw a whole lot. And if he's spending a turn Divine Favoring, that's less stuff he's putting on the board to apply pressure. Hooked Reaver is online, and it's not enough on board to kill it. He's going to have to activate the Sacred Maul in order to push through this, but the Acidic Swampu is coming down just to be a body.
In this matchup, you really can't just sit back and just say do board clear after board clear. At some point, even Warlock needs to start to make a board and start to then be the aggressor to try and beat down the Odd Paladin. If you do give the Odd Paladin too much time, they can even just start to grind you out. So him getting up these minions is going to be his first step in trying to win this game.
Hitting the button, playing a Firefly. He's going to push through this 7-7, taking 7 in the process, going down to 20. Losing his 1/1s. This is not the most intimidating board I've ever seen coming out of Impact. But Casie, he's got the Twilight Drakes. He has a Vulgar Homunculus, but... oh, this is just rough. You want to play the Skulking guys to get rid of the other Blessing of Might, but at the same time, you want to play Taunts because you might just be dead to Leroy.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that if he plays this Vulgar Homunculus, he's dead to Leroy, and even if he doesn't, there's just no way to play around at this point. So that's when you start to definitely feel anxious as the Even Warlock in this position, when you just know that you're just dead to stuff sometimes. Luckily for him, we do not see that Leroy in Impact's hand just yet. But actually, the Ooze is a very heads-up play, because now even if Impact does have Leroy, he needed a Blessing of Might to go with it.
Yeah, it would have been very unfortunate if Impact had a Vine Cleaver on this turn. Casie lost his second Acidic Swamp Ooze to kill the Maul, but at the same time, if Impact has Vine Cleaver in this situation, I don't think an Acidic Swamp Ooze was going to do a whole lot anyway. And there's the Blessing of Might we were talking about. I think he's just going to use it right now to push through this Vulgar Homunculus. Veteran on the Firefly going to push another 2. Casey's down to 4 HP.
Casie has the Bone Mare, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Impact has access to both that level up and Raid Leader if he wants to try and push damage next turn. But that's what Casey's just going to have to do. He's going to just play the Bone Mare, hope that... oh, wow. I didn't even notice the Lich King. That's a little bit bigger. That's perfect.
The better 8 drop.
Oh, yeah.
It's real good here. Army of the Dead is actually just insane. He can pull out a bunch of minions and then Sun Fury Protector him. That's just good.
Yeah, since Impact does not actually have a way to push through those last points of lethal this turn, I could see, unless he gets very unlucky, Army of the Dead with that Sun Fury Protector being able to just survive another turn to get to that Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Man, turns out Lich King's pretty good. He was hiding in the hand for me, and he was just absolutely crucial for Casie to try and turn the corner in this game.
Lich King, not one to hide. And you are absolutely correct, Bob. Lich King is just a good card. There's a reason it's played in, I think, basically almost every archetype that even allows it. If Odd Paladin could have one even card, I think it'd be Lich King.
I think that would
Tarim.
be. I think it would be Tarim.
Yeah,
but
never mind. I take that back.
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It's a real good card, and can definitely bring you back from points where things looked very dire.
Like a mole?
Yeah, of course.
That dire.
So Casie actually is just going to go for, you know, a play that doesn't risk, say, discarding 2 Defiles, 2 Hellfires. Just going to guarantee get a whole bunch of taunts on the board, knowing that even though he's at 2 HP, Odd Paladin doesn't have any reach.
Yeah, no consecration. You have to play around. Blood Reaver Gul'dan coming down next turn. Going to bring back a Vulgar Homunculus and a Hooked Reaver. Going to heal for 5, and with the hero power, it's just going to slowly start slipping away from impact. But he's got to get something huge off this Divine Favor. Fungalmancer, too expensive. There's the Vine Cleaver. Oh, this is just not looking good for impact at all.
And this trade is definitely not going to work out for impact. That means another Vulgar Homunculus is coming back. And I think that is probably going to be it. Once this Blood Reaver cooldown comes back, it brings back 2 Hooked Reavers, 2 Homunculus, and I don't know what Impact does about that.
I think it only brings back 1 Hooked Reaver.
Yeah, you're right, 1 Hooked Reaver. We only saw the 1/7/7 come down this game. And just also gaining the 5 life in the process. Yeah, Impact did draw a bunch of cards, but he's just not going to be able to capitalize on these just 3 small minions on the board.
No Owls. Like the early iterations of the deck, usually ran 2 Owls because around the time, Void Lord was still one of the most popular cards in the Warlock package, and you needed to push through those with Owls. But as the meta evolved, Owls were one of the first things to get cut from the Odd Paladin list, so no Owls in the deck that can somehow go around these taunts. Lich King just going face, no respect for that raid leader.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Impact, the Fungalmancer and Leroy is not enough to push through to the face with all these taunts on the board. And you got to give it to Casie. He was able to stick in this series when things did not look so good. And after going up 2-1, he was able to just stick in it, find that win.
Yeah, it's really good to see that Casie kind of brought it back, you know, centered himself after that little bit of a blunder in Game 4. Don't want to get tilted because when you're going into Game 5, you have just as likely a victory as anyone else. He sees the Fungalmancer come down, and you see a little bit of sigh of relief coming out of him.
Yeah, Impact is just trying to find a way to survive on the board. We could obviously see that he has that reach with Bone Mare and Dread Infernal, and that will be it. But Impact, still an incredible performance in this tournament, not losing a single series until then.
Okay, I was about
just
to say.
Being able to go 9-0 in the Swiss was just an incredible feat and something to be proud of for sure. But that is going to be Casie, our first finalist for HCT Santa Ana.
Yeah, it would have been real nice to have the storyline of Impact getting second at Oakland Esports Arena and then coming into the finals once again in Southern California. But unfortunately, Casie